The little boy's voice cuts clean through the noise of the whole bakery. Not loud, not demanding. Just honest in that way only a child can be. The kind of honest that makes every adult in the room go still without knowing why. "Excuse me, sir. Do you have any day-old cake?" Cale's hand stops mid-reach inside the display case. His fingers hover over a tray of fresh croissants, and for exactly 1 second, he does not breathe. He straightens slowly, turns around, and there stands Zion. 4 years old, brown corduroy jacket 2 sizes too big, one sneaker lace undone, eyes wide and patient, and completely unashamed. Cale's chest does something he will not name out loud. He steps around the counter, crouches down to Zion's level, and keeps his voice low and even. "Where did you hear that word, baby? Day old?" Zion blinks. "Miss Paulette at school said that's the cake they give away at the end of the day, the one nobody buys." He tilts his head. "Do you have some?" The fluorescent warmth of the bakery hums above them. The glass cases glow with sourdough loaves and lemon tarts and chocolate rounds dusted in powdered sugar. Outside, the New Jersey afternoon is gray and cold, pressing flat against the window like it has nowhere better to be. Hi, viewers. If Zion walked into your bakery and asked you that question, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know. Cale reaches into the case behind the counter and pulls out a full slice of vanilla butter cake. Today's, not yesterday's, not the kind that's going stale. Wraps it in wax paper and hands it to Zion without a word about the price. Zion takes it with both hands, looks up. "Thank you, sir." "You're welcome, little man." It should end there. It should be a quiet, small, forgettable moment inside a forgettable Tuesday afternoon in a bakery that most people in this zip code barely notice. It does not end there. The door opens. Not the way a door opens when a regular customer walks in, with the ordinary jingle of the bell and the rush of cold air and the smell of someone's coat. This door opens the way a room changes when a weather system moves through it. Pressure shifts. Temperature drops by a degree. Every head in the bakery turns, and most people do not fully understand why their eyes move without permission. 3 men walk in. They are identical in the way that is almost wrong, the kind of identical that makes the brain stutter because it was not prepared to process the same face 3 times in 3 seconds. Sharp jaw, silver gray eyes, wide shoulders pressed against black wool coats that did not come from any store in this neighborhood. Tom Ford, custom. The kind of coats that cost more than 3 months of Cale's rent. And Cale knows exactly what that coat costs because he used to sit in boardrooms where men like this talked about their tailors the way regular people talked about the weather. That was a different life. The 3 men stop just inside the doorway. The tallest one, right in the center, lets his eyes move across the bakery slowly, the way a man surveys a room he already owns before he has been told he owns it. His name is Zarius Wolf. His brothers on either side of him are Xavion and Zane, the Wolf triplets. 34 years old. Combined net worth somewhere north of $6 billion, depending on which quarter you are asking about. Owners of Wolf Capital Group, which has its hands in luxury fashion acquisitions, tech infrastructure, and a cryptocurrency expansion strategy that made the cover of Forbes 11 months ago. They are not from New Jersey. They are very far from where they are supposed to be. Zarius's eyes move across the glass cases, across the small chalkboard menu on the wall, across the 2 other customers sitting near the window. And then they stop. They stop on Zion. Zion, who is still standing at the counter with his wax paper slice of vanilla cake, one sneaker lace still undone, looking back at the three large men in the doorway with the complete and total fearlessness that belongs only to children who have not yet been taught to be afraid of powerful men. Xavion makes a sound, not a word, just a sound, low and involuntary, the kind that comes from somewhere the body does not ask permission before speaking. Zane grabs his brother's arm. Zarius does not move at all. He just looks at the child, and something in his face does something that has no name in any business language these men were raised to speak. Something cracks open behind his silver-gray eyes, and it is not grief exactly, and it is not recognition exactly, but it is close to both, and it is violent in the way that quiet things are sometimes violent. Kale steps forward from behind the counter. His body moves before his brain finishes the instruction. He positions himself between Zion and the three men with a calm that costs him everything he has, and he keeps his face completely flat. "Can I help you?" His voice does not shake. His hands, pressed flat against the countertop, do not shake either. But his blood is moving differently. His pulse is doing something architectural, rearranging itself around a truth his body recognized the moment the door opened, even before his eyes confirmed what was standing in the doorway. He knows these men, not from a distance, not from a magazine cover, not from a Forbes profile. He knows the way Zarius stands with his weight on his left foot when he is trying not to show that something has hit him. He knows the exact angle of Xavion's jaw when he is working through something he does not have language for yet. He knows that Zane always grabs the person closest to him before he grabs himself. He knows all three of them the way a person knows a fire that once burned them, completely, permanently, in a place that does not show from the outside. Zarias' eyes move from Zion to Kale, and there it is. The moment of recognition lands in the space between them like something physical, like a stone dropped into still water. And the ripples do not go outward, they go inward, compressing, tightening, pulling every unsaid thing from 4 years ago into this tiny bakery in New Jersey on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Zarias' voice, when it comes, is very quiet. Kale. Not a question, not a greeting, just a name, placed in the air between them like an object being set down carefully on a surface that might not hold. Kale does not answer. He picks Zion up, settles him on his hip, and looks at the three men standing in his doorway with the stillness of someone who has rehearsed for a moment they prayed would never come. "Bakery closes in 10 minutes, Kale says. Zarias takes one step forward, and the child on Kale's hip turns to look at the three silver-eyed men in the doorway, and smiles the way children smile when they recognize something they cannot name. And every single person in that room understands, on a level below thought and below language, that everything is about to change. Zarias stops walking. His eyes drop to Zion's face. Stay there. Travel across the boy's jaw, his brow, the exact particular shade of his silver-gray eyes. Eyes that do not belong to Kale. And every person in the room who is paying attention can see that. And the one person in the room who has been living with that fact for 4 years watches Zarias arrive at it in real time. And for the first time in possibly his entire adult life, Zarias Wolf looks like a man who does not know what to do next. His brother Xavion says, very quietly, almost to himself, "That's not possible." But it is. It is entirely, completely, irreversibly possible. And Kale holds his son tighter, and the bakery is very quiet. And outside, the gray afternoon presses against the glass, and nobody moves. Because the question that has been sitting at the bottom of 4 years of silence just rose to the surface, and nobody in this room is ready for the answer. 5 years ago, the elevator in the Wolf Capital Tower smelled like leather and cold air, and the particular kind of money that does not need to announce itself. Cale steps out of it on the 42nd floor, holding a portfolio he has revised 11 times, and wearing the only blazer he owns that does not have a loose button. He is 23. He has a finance degree from Rutgers, a GPA that made his advisor take a photograph of the transcript, and exactly one contact inside Wolf Capital. A recruiter named Dana, who told him over the phone that his application was, quote, the most technically precise she had seen in 4 years of hiring cycles. He is also an Omega. He does not advertise this. He does not hide it either. He simply exists in it, the way a person exists in a body, without ceremony, without apology. He takes his suppressants on schedule. He dresses in a way that is professional and clean and gives nothing away. He walks into the 42nd floor of Wolf Capital on a Monday morning in October, and he is good at his job before his job has even started yet. He gets hired, not for the junior analyst position he applied for the senior research role that was not posted publicly. The one Zarius Wolf himself pulled him into after reading his portfolio during a meeting that was only supposed to take 20 minutes and ran for an hour 40. Zarius had looked up from the portfolio and said, "Where have you been?" Cale had said, "New Jersey." Zarius had laughed. It was the first time Cale had ever heard him laugh. That was the beginning of everything good and everything terrible. For 14 months, Cale works inside the Wolf Capital empire, and he is exceptional at it. He maps market movements and luxury acquisitions with a precision that makes the senior partners stop arguing in meetings because his projections keep being right. He flags a misalignment in their Chanel partnership structure that saves the company $31 million in a single quarter. He is the first person in the office and usually not the last, but close. And he does not make the mistake of thinking that being good at his job means the playing field is level. He knows it is not. He knows it in the way the assistants look at him when he walks into the executive floor, in the way certain board members talk around him instead of to him in meetings, directing their answers to the alpha analysts beside him even when Cale asked the question. He knows it in the way his suppressant prescription requires a company health form that lists his designation, and how that form lives in an HR file that more people have access to than they should. He knows the system. He works inside it carefully. He keeps his distance from all 3 Wolf brothers in every way that counts. And then the Aspen Summit happens. 4 days. High altitude. The kind of corporate retreat that gets called a strategy meeting, but is really a pressure cooker. Sleep-deprived, alcohol present, hierarchy reinforced. Cale goes because his analysis work is being presented, and his attendance is listed as required on the official agenda. His suppressant supply runs short on day 2, not through carelessness, through a pharmacy error in the prescription refill that he does not discover until he opens the case in his hotel bathroom and finds it 3 doses light. He reports to the on-site medical coordinator. The coordinator notes it, does nothing with urgency. By day 3, Cale's biology is doing what biology does when it is no longer being managed. He is not out of control. He is not dramatic about it. He is a professional in a high-pressure environment handling a medical situation with every tool available to him, which is not enough tools. And Wolf Capital has no protocol for this. Not one written policy. Not one procedure. Not a single escalation path for an Omega employee experiencing a medical gap at a company retreat. The handbook, which Cale had read entirely because he reads everything entirely, contains 14 pages on alpha wellness accommodations and 3 sentences on Omega designation disclosures. 3 sentences. That is the system. That is what Kale is working inside. What happens on night 3 is not a story about a monster. It is a story about a structure that was never built to protect him. It is a story about 3 men who had power and did not think carefully enough about what power does in a room where it is not balanced. It is a story about authority and proximity, and the thing that happens when an institution fails the person most at risk inside it. Kale leaves Aspen before the closing breakfast. He does not file a report. He knows what reports filed by Omegas against alpha executives inside luxury financial empires look like on paper and in practice. He has seen those outcomes. He has read those cases. He knows what the system does with them. He does not run in panic. He walks out with his portfolio, his laptop, and a very clear understanding of exactly what happened and exactly who allowed the conditions for it to exist. 2 weeks later, he takes a pregnancy test in a gas station bathroom off the interstate in a town he has never been to before. He looks at the result for a long time, and then he makes a decision. Not from weakness, not from fear, from a calculation so precise and so clear that it would have impressed the partners at Wolf Capital if they could have seen it. He removes himself from the system. He disappears. And he builds something entirely his own. Because Kale Merritt understands, with the certainty of someone who once mapped $31 million of risk for men who never said thank you, that the only structure he can trust completely is one he constructs himself. He does not know, as he drives away from that gas station, that 3 men on the 42nd floor of a tower in Manhattan are about to spend the next 4 years looking for him and finding nothing. The first winter in New Jersey nearly breaks him. Not emotionally, practically. The apartment above the dry cleaner on Halsey Street has a radiator that works 3 days out of 7 and a window in the kitchen that does not fully close. And Kale sits at the small table in that kitchen in November with a spreadsheet open on his laptop and the collar of his coat turned up against the draft. And he does the math on what he has left and what he needs and how long he has to make it stretch. The numbers are not good. He has $11,000 saved. He has a baby due in late April. He has a finance degree and a 4-year gap in his employment history that he is still figuring out how to explain without explaining anything at all. He also has a plan. It is a very small plan, almost embarrassingly small for a man who once mapped luxury acquisition strategies across 4 continents. But it is his, and that matters more than its size. He knows bread. His grandmother Odessa taught him to bake before he could read a balance sheet, and the hands remember what the mind sometimes forgets. He starts in his kitchen with a second-hand mixer and a bread pan he buys for $4 at the church sale around the corner. He makes sourdough first, then a simple butter cake, then a honey loaf that the woman upstairs, Mrs. Fontaine, starts leaving a note under his door to ask about once a week. He sells from the apartment for 3 months. No storefront, no signage, just word of mouth through a neighborhood that knows hunger and knows good bread and passes both pieces of information along at the same speed. Zion arrives on April 22nd at 2:14 in the morning. Kale holds his son in both arms in a hospital room with a view of a parking structure. And the word that comes to him is not joy exactly and not grief exactly, but something that sits in the space where both of those live. Enormous and immediate and entirely without a plan. He names him Zion because it means a place of safety. Because Kale intends with every cell in his body to be exactly that. The bakery comes 2 years later. A commercial lease on a narrow storefront 3 blocks from the apartment, negotiated with the kind of quiet aggression that surprises landlords who look at Kale and see someone they can dismiss. He guts it himself on weekends, paints it himself, builds the display case in pieces over 6 weeks with instructions from a YouTube channel and a manual he prints out at the library. He names it Merits. Simple, no subtitle, no explanation. By the 3rd month, it is breaking even. By the 6th, it is profitable. Small profitable, the kind where every dollar is accounted for and there is no margin for disaster, but profitable. He hires one part-time employee, a woman named Brielle, who lives 2 streets over, and has a laugh that makes customers come back more than the croissants do. He puts Zion in a toddler program at the church on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. He builds a routine so exact and so load-bearing that it holds the entire structure of their life together, the way a keystone holds an arch. And then the market does what markets do. The crypto expansion that Kale had actually predicted in a private analysis he ran for himself alone, sitting in that cold kitchen because old habits, collapses over 18 months in a cascade that takes 3 of his 5 small investments with it. A stock position he holds in a mid-tier consumer goods company drops 62% in a single quarter, following a supply chain report that nobody in the retail analyst community saw coming, including Kale. And that is the loss that stings the most, because he should have seen it, and he did not. The bakery survives, barely. He restructures, cuts his own draw for 4 months, sleeps less, works more. Does not tell Brielle the full picture because the full picture is not hers to carry. Zion, through all of it, is luminous. He's the kind of child who asks questions about everything with the patience to actually wait for the full answer. He collects rocks from the parking lot behind the building and arranges them by color on the windowsill. He learned to count using the bakery's bread inventory. He has his mother's sharp attention and something else, something in the line of his jaw and the particular silver gray of his eyes that Kale does not look at directly for too long, because looking at it directly costs something. Life finds its shape. Not the shape Kale would have drawn 5 years ago, not the shape anyone looking at his Rutgers transcript would have predicted, but a real shape, a self-constructed shape, a shape that belongs to nobody but him. And then one Tuesday in late February, Kale is restocking the display case at 3:20 in the afternoon when Brielle pokes her head through the kitchen door and says, "There's a car outside." Kale doesn't look up. There are always cars outside. "Not like this one," Brielle says. "This one's been parked across the street for 40 minutes. Blacked out windows. No plates I can read." Kale's hands stop moving. He sets the tray down on the counter with a care that is very deliberate, the kind of deliberate that is working hard to look like nothing at all. "Tell Zion to stay in the back," he says. Brielle looks at him for a moment. She has known Kale for 2 years, and in 2 years, she has never heard that tone in his voice. Flat and precise and stripped of everything soft. And she does not ask any questions because the tone answers all of them. She goes. Kale straightens up, puts both hands flat on the counter, looks at the front window of his bakery, the one he built with $4 and a bread pan and 4 years of everything he had. The black car does not move. He thought he had built high enough walls. He thought distance and silence and the total erasure of his paper trail had been enough. He had been careful in ways most people do not have the discipline to sustain. But power does not need a trail to follow. Power simply decides to look. And when it looks hard enough, it finds. Zarius Wolf has not slept a full night in 4 years. Not because of the company, not because of the market cycles, or the board pressure, or the Forbes profile that required 17 rounds of PR review before anyone agreed to run it. He has managed all of that with the particular control deficiency that made him the kind of executive other executives write case studies about. He has not slept because of the Omega, who disappeared from Aspen on a Thursday morning and left behind nothing. Not a forwarding address, not a resignation letter, not a single conversation that would have given anyone a place to start looking. Just gone. Zarius had noticed on Friday. The empty desk, the badge returned to the security desk in an envelope, with no note inside. He had assumed, for approximately 18 hours, that it was a personal decision, a career move, a quiet departure that was within every employee's right. And then he had thought about Aspen, and he had understood that assumption for the insult it was, and he had begun to look. The search runs for 4 years, not publicly, not through channels that would make headlines or raise questions he was not prepared to answer. Quietly, expensively, through a private firm that handles sensitive corporate matters and has a success rate that justifies the retainer. Through every database, every employment record, every digital footprint that Cale Merritt had left behind before Thursday morning in Aspen. There is almost nothing. Rutgers transcript. 4 years of employment records at Wolf Capital, meticulously clean. 1 bank account, closed 8 weeks after Aspen. 1 lease, terminated with proper notice, also 8 weeks after Aspen. 1 cell number, disconnected. After that, a wall. Whoever Cale Merritt became after Aspen, he became with the precision of someone who understood exactly how people are found and made every decision in reverse. New phone, new bank, business registered under a holding name that takes the investigative firm 14 months to connect back to him. No social media, no digital trail that leads anywhere useful. Xavion, who handles the human intelligence side of the search because he is the one among the 3 brothers who is best at reading people, flies to New Jersey twice. The second time, he sits in a car on a street 2 neighborhoods over from Merritt's Bakery for 6 hours, watching foot traffic, and does not know he is 2 blocks from the answer, because the holding company registration is still being traced and the connection has not surfaced yet. He flies home empty. Zane, who processes things differently than his brothers, slower, more interior, more willing to sit with the weight of something before putting words around it, has a conversation with Zarius in year 3 that neither of them references again, but that neither of them forgets. "We weren't careful enough," Zane says. They are in Zarius's office, late. The city is spread out below the floor-to-ceiling glass like a second version of itself in lights. Zarius does not answer right away. He is looking at the city the way he looks at a problem he cannot yet solve, with a patience that reads like coldness to people who do not know him well. "No," he says finally, "we weren't." That is the entire conversation, but inside it is everything. The Aspen retreat and its missing protocol, and the health coordinator who noted a concern and did nothing urgent with it, and the handbook with its 3 sentences, and the system that all 3 of them built and funded and expanded, and never once examined from the position of the person most at risk inside it. They are not good villains. They are not cartoons. They are 3 men with more power than wisdom who built a structure and never stood inside it from the wrong end, and therefore never saw what it looked like from there. Zarius reforms the Omega accommodation policy in year 2, quietly, without announcement, without a press release. Full medical protocol, mandatory retreat health support, designation blind advancement review. He does it because it is right. He does it also, if he is honest with himself in the way that he occasionally forces himself to be, because doing it feels like leaving a door open somewhere. He still cannot find Cale. And then, on a Tuesday in late February, the investigative firm sends a single document. A holding company registration finally traced through 3 layers of filing to a name, K. Merritt. A business address in Newark, New Jersey, a bakery called Merritt's. Zarius reads the document at 11 p.m. in his home office. He sits with it for a long time. Then he calls his brothers. He does not say, "We found him." He says, "Come to New Jersey." And then he says something else, quietly, with the weight of a man who has been carrying a 4-year question and is only now arriving at the door of its answer. I think there's something we don't know yet. Xavion takes the next hour trying to find words for the feeling that has been living in his chest since the day Kale left, and finding, as he always does, that the words are not quite the right shape for it. Zane simply says, "When?" "Tomorrow," Zarius says. None of them sleep that night, not because of the company, because 4 years ago they lost someone, and they are only now close enough to understand that what they lost may be larger and more consequential and more irreversible than any of them were prepared to face, and they have not even walked into the bakery yet. They have not seen the child. They have not looked into silver-gray eyes on a 4-year-old face and felt the particular kind of impossible recognition that does not leave room for any other thought. They are 1 day away from the moment that will rearrange everything, and not one of them is ready. Zion finds the man with the silver eyes first. This is not surprising to anyone who has spent more than a week around Zion, because Zion finds everything first. The loose tile behind the counter, the bird nest in the gutter above the bakery door, the place where the floorboard creaks exactly like a question mark. He navigates the world with the particular alert attention of a child who has grown up around a parent who notices everything. And he has absorbed that quality the way children absorb the qualities of the people who raise them, completely and without trying. He is sitting in the small back corner of the bakery, the area Kale fenced off with a low wooden gate 3 years ago to give Zion a space to exist in while the shop is open. A small rug, a crate of books, a box of building blocks that Brielle painted in primary colors last spring. Zion is not playing with the blocks. He is watching the 3 men who walked through the front door. He does this openly, the way children watch things they find interesting, without the social training that tells adults to look away. The tallest one is watching him back. Zion considers this. He is used to adults noticing him. People at the bakery smile at him, give him small comments about his eyes, ask Kale if he gets that color from his father. Kale always smiles when people ask that, and says something that ends the conversation without answering it. Zion has filed this away in the part of his mind where he keeps questions he is waiting to grow into. But this is different. The tall man is not smiling. He is not giving a small, friendly comment. He is standing completely still in the middle of the bakery with his coat still on, and his silver eyes fixed on Zion with an expression that Zion does not have the vocabulary for yet, but that reaches him anyway, the way music reaches people before words do. Zion gets up. He picks up the small stuffed bear he keeps on the rug. Its name is Marcus, named after a man in a book Kale reads to him about a boy who builds a city. And he walks to the low gate and stands at it, and looks up at the 3 identical men from a distance of about 6 feet. "You all look the same," Zion observes. Xavion makes a sound that is almost a laugh, and then is not. Zarius crouches down. He does this slowly, like a man being careful with something that could break, and he brings himself to eye level with Zion, and for a moment, the 2 of them simply look at each other. Up close, the resemblance is not subtle. It is architectural. It lives in the bone structure, the particular forward angle of the brow, the straight line of the nose, the jaw that is not yet sharpened into its adult version, but is already showing exactly what it will become. And the eyes. The silver gray that does not come from kale, that has never come from kale. The kale has never once pretended comes from anywhere other than exactly where it comes from. Zarias' throat moves. "What's your name?" he asks. His voice is very controlled, the kind of controlled that is doing a great deal of structural work underneath. "Zion," the boy says. "What's yours?" "Zarias." Zion tries this out. "Zarias." Nods, apparently satisfied with how it fits in his mouth. "That starts with Z. My name starts with Z too." "It does," Zarias says. "My dad's name starts with K," Zion adds helpfully. "He's right there." He points. All three men look at Kale, who has moved from behind the counter to the edge of the open bakery floor, and who is standing with the stillness of someone who has rehearsed for a moment, and found in this moment that no rehearsal was sufficient. Zion looks between the three men and Kale with the processing attention of a child who is collecting data he cannot fully use yet. Then he lifts Marcus the bear and holds him out towards Zarias. "You can hold him if you want," Zion says. "He helps when something feels weird." The bakery is very quiet. Zarias looks at the small stuffed bear being offered to him by a 4-year-old child, with his jaw and his eyes and his brother's identical face distributed across two other bodies standing behind him. And something happens in Zarias Wolf's expression that none of his board members have ever seen. None of his partners, none of the journalists who have profiled him. Something that is not a business feeling and not a strategy and not a controlled response to a known variable. He takes the bear. He holds it with both hands very carefully, the way a man holds something he did not know he needed until it was in his hands. Zane turns away from the room. His shoulders do something that he does not want anyone to see. Xavion stands perfectly still, with his jaw tight and his eyes doing something complicated. And Kale watches all of this from across the room with his arms crossed and his face flat, and the knowledge that the wall he has spent 4 years building is not coming down because of a confrontation or an investigation or a legal maneuver. It is coming down because his 4-year-old son offered a stuffed bear to a man who is, in every biological and impossible and irreversible sense, his father. And the biology did not ask Kale's permission. It never does. Zion tugs on Zarias' sleeve. "Do you like cake?" Zarias looks at him. "Yes," he says. His voice has lost something, some of the architecture that usually holds it in its exact shape. "We have some left," Zion says. "The good kind, not the day-old kind." He looks at Kale. "Right, Dad? Can they have some?" Every person in the room waits. Kale looks at his son, this child he built a bakery for, a life for, a wall for. And then he looks at the three men standing in the middle of that life, with their Tom Ford coats and their silver eyes and 4 years of absence written across their faces. He should say no. He should take Zion and close the bakery and make a phone call to a lawyer before anything else happens. He should do the thing that the careful, precise, wall-building version of himself has been planning for exactly this eventuality since the day he first parked on this street and signed his lease and decided this neighborhood would be safe enough. He looks at Zion. Zion is waiting with the total open patience of a child who genuinely believes the answer is probably yes. "One piece," Kale says, quietly. "Sit down if you're going to stay." It is not forgiveness. It is not an opening. But it is a crack in the wall. And walls do not fall all at once. They fall one crack at a time. Zarias sits down. His brothers follow. And across the bakery, Kale turns back toward the counter and grips the edge of it with both hands, below the countertop where nobody can see, and breathes through the fact that the one thing he protected most just walked himself directly into the center of the one situation Kale spent 4 years preventing. Not because Zion was careless, because Zion is a child who offers his bear to people who look like something, feels weird. And something in this bakery on this Tuesday feels more than weird. It feels like the beginning of a reckoning that Kale has known. Somewhere below every spreadsheet and every bread tray and every careful, deliberate, ordinary day was always coming. The question was never if. The question was always whether he would be ready when it did. And standing here now, watching his son share cake with the man whose eyes Zion inherited, Kale knows with total and devastating clarity that he is not ready. He has never been ready. And it is here anyway. The envelope arrives at 7:04 in the morning. Kale finds it on the mat inside the bakery's back entrance, the one that opens to the alley, the one whose address is not listed anywhere public, the one that only 3 people in the world know about, and 2 of them are Kale and Brielle. He picks it up. No return address. His name typed on the front in a clean sans serif font that does not belong to anyone's handwriting. He stands in the alley in the cold for a moment before he opens it, and in that moment, he is doing what he always does when something unexpected arrives. Running the perimeter of it in his mind, checking every edge before he steps inside. He opens it. 1 page. A single paragraph. Legal language at the top identifying the sender as Harmon Voss and Associates, a firm he has never contacted and never given his address to. The paragraph informs him that a petition for parental rights determination has been filed in the state of New Jersey by a party whose name is redacted on this preliminary notice, pending formal service of documents through proper channels. Kale reads it twice, then he folds it, puts it in his coat pocket, goes inside, ties his apron, starts the oven. Brielle arrives at 8 and knows within 40 seconds that something is wrong, because Kale has already restocked the entire display case, pre-portioned every tray, and is on his second cleaning pass of the countertop, which is not a cleaning behavior. It is a thinking behavior. She does not ask. She puts on the coffee and takes the front of the house and lets him think. He thinks for 3 hours. The sequence is not complicated, and that is exactly what makes it terrible. The Wolfs sat in his bakery on Tuesday. It is now Friday. 3 days is exactly the right amount of time for a $6 billion legal team to draft a preliminary parental rights filing, identify a back-channel address through a process server with the right resources, and deposit 1 envelope in 1 alley at 7:04 in the morning. 3 days is fast, but for men with that kind of infrastructure, fast is just another word for deciding to move. Kale pulls his phone out at 11 and calls the only lawyer he has ever trusted, a woman named Deja Okafor, who handles family law out of a 2-person office in Montclair, and who Kale consulted once, 18 months ago, in a general preparation call he told himself was just precautionary. Deja picks up on the second ring. They filed, Kale says. A pause. Already? 3 days. Another pause, shorter this time. Come in this afternoon. He closes the bakery at 2. Leaves Brielle with Zion and a full tray of butter cake and an explanation that takes 11 words. I have a meeting. I'll be back by 5. Lock up at 3. Deja's office smells like coffee and paper and the particular focused calm of a woman who has seen every version of this situation and has not once been surprised by how fast power moves when it decides to. She reads the notice, sets it down, folds her hands. "You knew this was a possibility," she says. "I knew it was a probability," Kale says. "Those are different things." Deja looks at him. "Do you have documentation of the Aspen event?" "I have everything," Kale says. "I documented it the week after, time-stamped, stored in 3 separate locations." Deja's expression does not change, but something behind it shifts. The specific shift of a lawyer recalibrating her assessment of the person sitting across from her. "Okay," she says. "Then we have more to work with than most people in this position." "I'm not most people," Kale says. "No," Deja says. "You are not." They spend 2 hours mapping the legal terrain. Parental rights petition means the filing party believes they can establish biological connection, which means the Wolfs either already have evidence or believe a court-ordered DNA test will produce it for them. Either way, the biology is not the battlefield. Kale has never disputed biology. Biology is not the argument. The argument is structure, context, power. The conditions under which Zion was conceived and the conditions under which Kale made the decision he made, and the 4-year silence of 3 men who had 100 resources and never once involved law enforcement in their search, which suggests they know exactly what a formal investigation of the Aspen retreat would surface. "They know what they're carrying," Deja says quietly. "They've known for 4 years," Kale says. He drives back to Newark in the early dark of a February evening and sits in the parked car outside the bakery for 4 minutes before he goes in. Inside, he can see the light in the window and hear, faintly, Zion's voice telling Brielle something with great enthusiasm about a rock he found. Kale breathes. He gets out of the car. He goes inside. He is not running. Running is what people do when they believe the ground ahead is safer than the ground beneath them. Kale does not believe that. He is standing exactly where he is standing, on ground he chose and built and paid for, and whatever is coming is going to have to come to him. But he is not naive. He knows what a $6 billion legal team looks like in motion. He knows what resources mean in a courtroom and outside of one. He knows that Deja Okafor is excellent, and her office has 2 people, and the Wolf's legal infrastructure has 200. He knows that this time, the wall he built is not the kind that holds against that kind of pressure. And he knows something else, something he has not said to Deja, and has not said to Brielle, and has not said to anyone. Because saying it makes it a thing that exists outside of his own chest, where he has been keeping it compressed and managed for 4 years. He is tired. Not of Zion, not of the bakery, not of the life he built from nothing in a cold apartment with a $4 bread pan. Tired of carrying the weight of what happened in Aspen alone. Tired of being the only person in the world who holds the full shape of it. Tired of building walls when what he actually wants, what he has never let himself want because wanting it felt like weakness, is for someone to finally stand in the room and say, "We were wrong, and we know it, and here is what we are prepared to do about it." Not money, not protection, not a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement attached. Accountability. The specific, structural, institutional kind that changes something real. He has not let himself want it because wanting it requires believing it is possible. And believing it is possible requires trusting 3 men he has spent 4 years protecting himself from. Zion comes running from the back when he hears the door. "Dad, I found a rock that looks like a triangle." Kale catches him, holds him, presses his face into the top of his son's head for exactly 1 second longer than usual. "Show me," he says, and Zion pulls him toward the back, talking the whole way, completely unaware that somewhere across the river in a tower in Manhattan, 3 men are sitting in a room with a legal team and a 4-year wait, and a question about what they are actually willing to do to make this right. The answer to that question is coming, and it will change everything. Kale opens the door himself. He does not let Deja open it. He does not let Brielle be present. He stands in the doorway of Merritt's Bakery at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday, with the closed sign still facing the street, and he looks at the 3 men on the other side of the glass, and he lets them wait for exactly 5 seconds before he turns the lock. No lawyers. That was the condition he sent through Deja's office 2 days after receiving their request for a meeting. No legal representation on either side in the room, just the people this actually involves. Deja had objected, professionally and clearly, and Kale had listened to every word of her objection and said he understood it and was doing it anyway. The Wolves agree to the condition within 4 hours of receiving it. That alone tells Kale something. They come in, all 3. Same coats, different posture. There is something gone from the way they carry themselves, some of the atmospheric pressure that filled the room the first time they walked through this door. They sit where Kale points, at the small table near the window, the one with 4 chairs and a crack in the corner of the surface that Kale has been meaning to sand down for a year. Kale puts 3 cups of coffee on the table, does not ask how they take it, sets down a small plate of plain butter cake because his hands needed something to do and his hands defaulted to the bakery. He sits across from them. For a moment, nobody speaks. Zarius begins, not with legal language and not with an apology, because an apology without structure is just a feeling, and Kale did not agree to this meeting to receive feelings. He begins with a statement. "We know what Aspen was," Zarius says. "Not our version of it, what it actually was." Kale looks at him, does not respond. "The medical coordinator filed a note," Zarius continues. "Internal. We found it during an HR audit 14 months after you left. It documented a prescription gap, a request for support, and no action taken. It was filed and closed the same day." Kale is very still. "The coordinator no longer works for us," Xavion says. "Neither does the HR director who received that note." "That's not enough," Kale says. His voice is level, not angry. Level is harder than angry and carries more weight. "We know," Zane says. Kale looks at all 3 of them. "You want to talk about Zion?" "We want to talk about everything," Zarius says, Zion included, but not first. This surprises Kale. He does not show it, but it recalibrates something in the room. "Then what's first?" Kale asks. "What we owe you," Zarius says, "separate from Zion, separate from any custody question. What we owe you as an employee who came to us in a medical gap at a company retreat and was failed by every system that should have protected him." The bakery is quiet. Outside, a delivery truck moves past. A dog barks twice 3 buildings down. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary morning pressing against the glass of a room where something very not ordinary is being said. Kale looks at the coffee cup in front of him. "What does that look like?" he asks. "What does owing me something look like in practice?" Xavion pulls a folder from the bag he carried in, sets it on the table, does not push it across, just sets it there, visible. Inside that folder is a proposed Omega Employee Protection Act that we drafted with an external ethics board, he says. "No internal lawyers, external. We wanted it clean." He looks at Kale directly. It covers mandatory medical protocols at all company events, designation blind advancement review with external audit, an anonymous reporting channel for power imbalance incidents, and a company-funded legal support office for any employee who needs to file a complaint against executive-level staff. Kale does not reach for the folder. Who drafted it? He asks. A board led by a woman named Dr. Anaya Bridges, Xavion says. She chairs the Omega Rights Policy Institute. She did not know our names when we contracted her. She only knew the situation. Kale looks at Zarius. Why? Zarius holds his gaze. Because we spent 4 years searching for you and using every resource we had to find you. And the entire time we were searching, we never once examined why you left. We looked for you. We never looked at ourselves. The word that comes to Kale is not relief and not forgiveness. It is something quieter and more complicated. The particular feeling of a truth finally being said out loud in a room after it has been compressed in silence for so long that you forgot what the uncompressed version of it sounded like. He reaches for the folder. He opens it. He reads, not quickly. Kale does not read important things quickly. He reads the first section, the second, the medical protocol clause. He finds the reporting channel provision and reads it twice. He finds the language around executive-level complaints and reads it a third time. Then he sets it down. This is a start, he says. Not a compliment. Not a thank you. A precise professional assessment from a man who has mapped $31 million of risk and knows the difference between a gesture and a structure. Zarius nods once. We know. It doesn't cover what happened to me specifically, Kale says. It covers future employees, which is the right priority. But it doesn't name Aspen. Silence. We'll name it, Zarius says quietly, internally, in a formal board statement. If you want it public, we'll make it public. That is your decision, not ours. Kale looks at him for a long moment. Something shifts in the room. Not dramatically, not with music or motion, just a very quiet shift. The kind that happens when a weight that has been held by one person for a very long time is finally acknowledged by the people who should have been sharing it. Zion, Kale says. Zarius straightens slightly, not defensively. Ready. He doesn't know anything, Kale says. He is 4 years old, and he offered you his bear, and that is the total extent of what he understands about this situation. Yes, Zarius says. If I allow any kind of relationship to develop between you and him, Kale says, it will be on my terms, my timeline, with my conditions about what he is told and when and by whom. Yes, Zarius says again. And if any of those conditions are not met, Kale says, I will take that folder and every piece of documentation I have had stored in 3 locations for 4 years, and I will make the entire story public in every format available to me. Not out of revenge, because the public has a right to know what happens inside these systems. Zarius does not flinch. Understood. Zane says quietly, We're not here to take him from you, Kale. Kale looks at Zane. No, he says. You're here because I decided to open the door. Remember that. Nobody argues with this, because it is exactly true. Kale closes the folder and slides it back across the table. Have Dr. Bridges contact Deja Okafor directly. They'll work through the policy language together. I want Deja's name on the final document. Xavion nods. The legal filing, Kale says. Zarius reaches into his coat pocket and produces a single sheet, sets it on the table. Withdrawal, he says. Filed this morning. Kale picks it up, reads it, sets it down. He stands. The meeting, from his side, is complete. The wolves stand, and Zarius looks at Kale across the small bakery table with the crack in the corner and the 3 cups of untouched coffee, and says, in a voice stripped of everything that is not exactly true, "I'm sorry, Kale." Not as a legal statement, as a person who had power and used it without thinking about where it landed. The bakery is very quiet. "I know," Kale says. That is all he says. 2 words, not forgiveness and not rejection. Something between them that is its own complete and honest thing. He walks them to the door, opens it, and as Zarius steps through it, Zion's voice comes from the back of the bakery, bright and immediate and completely uncomplicated by any of what just happened. "Are the Z-Men leaving?" Kale turns. Zion is standing at the gate in his pajama top and yesterday's jeans with Marcus the bear under one arm. Zarius stops in the doorway, looks at the boy. "For now," Zarius says. "Is that okay?" Zion considers this with great seriousness. "Will you come back?" Zarius looks at Kale. Kale's face gives him nothing. No permission and no refusal. Just the flat, careful stillness of a man who has decided to let the next moment be what it is. "If your dad says it's okay," Zarius says. Zion looks at Kale. "Dad?" And Kale, standing in his bakery with his apron on and 4 years of walls around him, looks at his son's open face and understands that the question being asked is not really about the Z-Men coming back. The question is whether Kale is going to let the wall be a door. He does not answer yet, but he does not say no. The policy document lands on Kale's table on a Thursday morning 3 weeks later, delivered by Deja Okafor in person with a coffee from the place 2 blocks over that Kale has never had time to try. Deja sets the document down, sets the coffee beside it, sits across from him and does not say anything while he reads because she has learned in the past month that Kale reads important things completely and in silence, and commentary during that process is not useful. He reads for 22 minutes, then he sets it down. Dr. Bridges pushed back on Clause 7, Deja says. The executive complaint provision. She wanted stronger language around the investigation timeline. The Wolf's legal team tried to extend the review window to 90 days. She held at 45, and they accepted. Good, Kale says. The board statement naming Aspen is attached as Exhibit C, Deja says. It's specific. It names the failure of the medical coordinator, the inadequacy of the original policy, and the 4-year gap during which no internal review was conducted. Does it name me? Only if you authorize it. There's a signature line. You have 30 days to decide. Kale wraps both hands around the coffee cup. Outside the bakery window, the February gray has started to thin at the edges, the way it does in the last 2 weeks of the month, when the light begins its slow negotiation back towards spring. The investment, he says. Deja pulls a second document from her folder. Separate from the policy work, independent. Their proposal is a small business development fund, Omega founder specific, administered by a third-party nonprofit. No Wolf Capital branding, no board seat, no access to your financials or your business decisions. They fund the organization. The organization funds the businesses. Kale looks at this document for a long time. They won't have any contact with the fund recipients? It's structured specifically to prevent it, Deja says. Dr. Bridges insisted on the firewall. The Wolves agreed. Kale sets the document down. This is not about me, he says. This fund. No, Deja agrees. It's not. I don't want anything from them that is about me, Kale says. I don't want their money in my bakery, my bank account, or my son's college fund. None of it. That is not what this was about. Deja nods. She has understood this about Kale for some time. The child support question. Kale looks at her. Zion is mine. I have raised him, housed him, fed him, and read to him every night for 4 years. That does not change. The wolves aren't contesting that, Deja says carefully. I know they're not, Kale says. I'm saying it anyway. So it's on record somewhere. She writes it down. What they are asking, Deja says, is a supervised introduction process. Structured, 6 weeks, 1 visit per week, 2 hours each, at a location of your choosing with you present. No overnight stays, no outings without your presence, no gifts without prior approval. At the end of 6 weeks, you and I review, and you decide whether to continue, modify, or stop entirely. Kale stands up, goes to the counter, comes back with a second cup of coffee he did not need, just needed the movement. He sits. Zion asked about them again yesterday, he says. This is not a legal statement. It is a father saying something true because it is the most relevant fact in the room. Deja is quiet. He called them the Z-Men, Kale says. He said their names all start with Z, like his. He asked if they were like him. He stops. I didn't know what to say. Deja gives him the silence he needs. He's going to figure it out on his own eventually, Kale says. Children always do. They collect pieces and they assemble them, and one day they bring you the assembled version and ask you to confirm it. And if you haven't already told them the truth, that moment is worse than anything. He picks up the document with the supervised visit structure. He reads it again. I want Brielle present at every visit, he says, not as staff, as a person Zion trusts. If Zion gets uncomfortable at any point, the visit ends. No discussion, no negotiation. It ends. Deja writes, The 6 weeks is a trial, Kale says, not a commitment, not a promise. A trial that I can end at any time for any reason. And if I end it, there is no legal recourse, no renewed filing, no pressure of any kind. Already in the document, Deja says, Clause 4. Kale looks up. Dr. Bridges added it without being asked, Deja says. Something in Kale's face moves slightly. Not much. Just enough. He picks up the pen. He signs his name at the bottom of the supervised visit agreement in the same precise, unhurried handwriting he used to use on financial reports for a company that had 14 pages of alpha wellness accommodations and 3 sentences about omegas. He does not feel relief. He does not feel victory. He feels the specific, quiet weight of a person who has stopped holding something completely alone and is learning, in real time, how to hold it differently. Not with trust, not yet. With conditions. With a door that opens from the inside and can close just as fast. He hands the signed document back to Deja. One more thing, he says. She looks up. I want a clause, Kale says, that says any future contact between the Wolf brothers and my son is permanently conditional on their continued compliance with the Omega Employee Protection Act inside their company. Not compliance for 6 months. Ongoing. Audited annually by Dr. Bridges' organization. If the policy is weakened, reduced, or defunded at any point, contact ends, immediately and permanently. Deja looks at him. You're tying access to accountability, she says. Yes, Kale says, because access without accountability is just a different version of power with no consequences. And I am done living inside that structure. Deja writes for a moment. Then she looks up. This will hold legally? If they sign it, Kale says, it will hold. And they'll sign it. How do you know? Kale picks up his coffee, looks at the bakery that he built from a second-hand mixer and a $4 bread pan, and 4 years of the kind of discipline most people never need. Because they know I have everything documented, he says, And because somewhere in there, past the legal team and the Forbes profile and the $6 billion, they know I'm right. He drinks his coffee. Outside, the light is doing its slow February negotiation back toward spring. And inside Merritt's Bakery, a man who was once told his designation made him a risk factor just signed his name to a document that made accountability a condition of access. Not a request, a condition. The first supervised visit is on a Saturday. Kale chooses the bakery because it is the only room in Zion's life where Zion is completely himself, where he knows every corner and every smell, and where Marcus the bear has a designated spot on the shelf behind the counter. He does not bring the wolves into Zion's apartment. He does not bring them into any space that belongs only to the two of them. The bakery is neutral ground. The bakery is also Kale's ground, and that distinction matters. Zion is wearing his good blue sweater and the sneakers with both laces tied, because Kale tied them twice before they came down from the apartment, and Zion accepted this with the patience of a child who understands that some mornings require extra care without being told why. Brielle arrives first, sets up the corner table with juice and a plate of the plain butter cake that has become, without anyone announcing it, the official food of every important conversation that happens in this building. She looks at Kale once, and Kale looks back, and 2 years of working together in a small space means that entire exchange contains more information than most people communicate in a paragraph. The wolves arrive at 10 exactly, not 1 minute early, not 1 minute late. Kale notices this. He was raised by a grandmother who said that punctuality was the first form of respect, and he has never stopped measuring people by it. He opens the door. They come in without coats this time, just sweaters, and the particular careful stillness of 3 men who have been briefed by their own lawyers on every clause of the document they signed, and who are, underneath all of that structure, genuinely nervous, in the way that people are nervous when something matters more than strategy. Zion is at his corner rug. He looks up when they come in. His face does the thing it did the first time. Open, processing, completely unguarded. "You came back," he says. "We did," Zaria says. Zion picks up Marcus, carries him over to the low gate, stands there looking up at the 3 identical men with the 3 identical sets of silver-gray eyes that match his own. Which one is which again? Zavion crouches down, points to himself. Zavion points to his left. Zane points to his right. Zarius. Zion says all 3 names carefully, testing each one. Then he points at Zavion. "You're the one who almost laughed, but didn't." Zavion blinks. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything," Zion says, with the calm certainty of a 4-year-old who has no reason to be modest about it. Zane makes a sound, short and startled and genuine, and it is the first unguarded sound any of the 3 men has made in this room, and something in the quality of the air shifts because of it. Kale watches from behind the counter. He watches Zarius sit on the floor, not in a chair, on the floor, because Zion has settled back on his rug and clearly expects that anyone talking to him will come to his level. He watches Zavion ask about the rocks on the shelf. He watches Zane, who is quieter than his brothers, pick up a building block that Zion hands him and turn it over in his hands like he is trying to understand the exact weight of it. He watches his son show 3 billionaires how to stack blocks in a load-bearing formation that Zion invented himself and calls the Z Tower. And he watches them follow Zion's instructions with the complete seriousness of men who have run multinational acquisitions and are currently being directed by a 4-year-old in a blue sweater. He watches all of this, and he feels it. the thing he has not let himself feel for 4 years, because feeling it while carrying it alone was too much. The grief and the anger and the exhaustion, and underneath all of those, pressed flat and almost unrecognizable, the original feeling. The one from before Aspen. The one from the 42nd floor and the portfolio, and the laugh he had never heard before, and the 14 months of being seen clearly by people with the power to see him and choosing to see him anyway. He feels it. He does not act on it. He is not ready for that, and he may not be for a long time. And that is exactly fine, because this is his timeline and nobody else's. But he lets himself feel it, briefly, like opening a window in a room that has been closed too long. Not to live with the window open, but just to let the air move through once and acknowledge that it exists. Brielle refills the juice. Zion shows Zarias a rock that looks like a triangle. Zarias holds it with both hands and says it is the best triangle rock he has ever seen, and means it. And Zion can tell the difference between meaning it and not meaning it, and accepts this verdict with great satisfaction. At the end of 2 hours, Kale says it is time. The wolves stand. They say goodbye to Zion with a formality that is careful and earned. No hugs, no promises. Nothing that reaches further than what the moment actually contains. Zarias looks at Kale at the door. "Same time next week?" he asks. Kale looks at his son, who is back on his rug, arranging rocks in a new formation, already building the next thing. "Same time next week," Kale says. It is not a beginning. Not yet. It is a next step on a road that has no destination written on it yet. Only the understanding that walking it honestly is the only way it leads anywhere worth going. 3 weeks later, the Wolf Capital Group issues an internal board statement acknowledging the failure of systemic Omega protections at the 2021 Aspen corporate retreat. The statement names the policy gaps. It names the consequences. It names the reforms. It does not name Kale. Kale reads it in his kitchen at 11 p.m., with Zion asleep upstairs and a cup of tea going cold on the table beside him. He reads it once. Then he opens his laptop and pulls up the authorization form that Deja sent 3 weeks ago, the one with the signature line that asks whether his name can be added to Exhibit C. He signs it. Because silence protected him when he needed protecting. And naming the truth protects the next person who will sit at a desk on the 42nd floor and need the system to be different. He hits send. Then he closes the laptop, drinks the cold tea, and goes upstairs to check on his son. Zion is asleep with Marcus under his chin, and 3 rocks lined up on the nightstand, their edges catching the hall light. Kale stands in the doorway for a moment. "We're okay," he says, quietly, to no one in particular, to both of them. Then he turns off the light. Spring comes to Newark the way it always does, not all at once, but in arguments. 1 warm day followed by 3 cold ones, then 2 warm days, then a week of gray. Then suddenly a morning where the light comes through the bakery window at an angle that belongs to a different season and stays there. And Kale looks up from the counter and realizes without planning that something has shifted. It is a Saturday in April. Zion is 6 weeks into knowing that the 3 men who come every Saturday are, in the specific biological sense, his fathers. Kale told him on a Tuesday evening after dinner, sitting at the kitchen table with the last of the day's bread between them, in language that was honest and simple and exactly calibrated to a 4-year-old's capacity to hold new information without being capsized by it. Zion had listened to the whole thing. Then he had said, "So that's why our eyes match." Kale had said, "Yes." Zion had thought about this for a moment. "Do they know they're my dads?" "Yes." "Do they want to be?" Kale had looked at his son. "They do. But you get to decide what that means. Nobody decides that except you." Zion had picked up his bread, chewed, thought. "Can I still call you Dad?" "Always," Kale said. "Okay," Zion said. "Then they can be something else. I'll figure out what." And he had, with the efficient practicality of a child who solves problems by moving through them rather than around them. He had decided, by the following Saturday, that Zarius was Z1, Xavion was Z2, and Zane was Z3. In the order he had learned their names, and this naming system had been received by all three men with an expression that was somewhere between overwhelmed and honored. On this Saturday in April, the bakery is doing something it has never done before. It is full. Not just customers, though there are those, the usual Saturday crowd that Brielle manages with a cheerful efficiency that Kale has been grateful for across 2 years of every kind of mourning. Full in the other sense, the sense of containing more life than it was built for. Zion is at the corner rug with Zane, who is taken to arriving early and sitting quietly in Zion's space before the official visit starts, because Zane is the quiet one, and quiet people recognize each other. They are reading a book about a boy who builds a city, which is Zion's current obsession, and Zane is reading it with the same seriousness with which he reads quarterly reports, and Zion has noticed this and respects it. Xavion is at the counter asking Brielle about the honey loaf recipe with a persistence that Brielle finds both annoying and flattering and has not yet decided what to do with. Zarius is at the small table near the window. He has a coffee in front of him and a document, not legal, just a report from Dr. Bridges' organization, a quarterly audit of the Omega Employment Protection Act implementation inside Wolf Capital, the second one since the policy launched. Kale walks over and sets a fresh cup down beside the old one. Zarius looks up. "Audit came back clean," he says. "I know," Kale says. "Deja sent it to me first." Zarius nods. There is something in the nod, not submission, but a recognition that this is the correct order of things. Kale receives the audit first. That is the structure. That is the condition. That is the accountability that makes every other part of this possible. Kale sits across from him. They are quiet for a moment. In the corner, Zion laughs at something in the book, and the sound travels across the bakery the way good sounds do in a small space, filling every corner without trying. "He's going to be extraordinary," Zarius says. Not to impress Kale, just because it is true. "He already is," Kale says. Zarius looks at the bakery, the display cases, and the chalk menu, and the second-hand mixer visible through the kitchen door, and the shelf with the rocks arranged by color. "You built something real here," he says. "I know that," Kale says. "I'm not trying to take it," Zarius says. "Any of it. I want to be clear about that." Kale looks at him. "You've been clear," he says. "I'm watching the actions, not the statements. Actions have been matching." Zarius holds his gaze. And keep going, Kale says. "That's all. Keep going." It is not romance. It is not resolution. It is something more honest than either of those things. Two people sitting across a cracked table in a small bakery in Newark, holding the weight of something complicated and choosing to keep walking forward in the same direction without pretending the road is simpler than it is. Outside, the April light is doing what April light does when it has finally won its argument with winter, lying flat and warm across the pavement, making everything it touches look like it belongs exactly where it is. Inside, Zion climbs off the rug, walks to the counter, and announces to the entire bakery that he needs a piece of cake because thinking about building a city makes him hungry. Everyone in the room laughs. Not politely, actually. The kind of laugh that does not plan itself. Kale cuts the cake, hands the first piece to Zion, hands pieces to Brielle, to Xavion, to Zane, to Zarius, to the two customers at the window table who are not part of any of this, but got caught in the radius of it and do not seem to mind. He cuts the last piece for himself, stands at the counter with it, looks at the room, his bakery, his son, his life, built from nothing, built with precision, built with the kind of stubbornness that does not look like stubbornness from the outside, but is, in fact, the strongest material available to a person who has been told, in 1,000 structural ways, that the system was not designed for them. He built anyway, and it held. Not every story ends with revenge. Some end with responsibility. Some end with a room full of people eating cake on a Saturday morning, and a child who knows his name starts with Z, and a wall that became a door, and a door that opened from the inside. Power is not proven by dominance. It is proven by what you change when you realize you were wrong. Kale takes a bite of the cake. It is good. It was always good. He made it himself. If this story moved something in you, if Kale's courage, Zion's innocence, or the weight of a system finally being held accountable stayed with you, then please subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story like this one. Every week, we bring you narratives that go deeper than the surface, stories about power, dignity, and what it actually means to build something that lasts. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And in the comments, tell us, what was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? Your words matter here. This community is built on them.